All right. So I'm very excited on a new episode. In Hebrew, we call it הדיל הזה בארצות הברית לא סיפרתי, but in English, we haven't told about this deal yet. I haven't told you about this deal yet, which sounds a little bit different in English, but it's still good. So the podcast is about interview people, and I say people, and because people who invest in real estate in the state. And the reason I say people, because I believe that any entrepreneur you can, admire is still a person. So I'm trying to do the interview from a person to a person and not interview somebody and look at him like he is a big shot or anything. So the interview is in simple words, try and, put things that people will, will admire the person, admire the let's say the past he has been, the thing he learned, and make it as a conversation and not as, like a lot of podcasts, that in America too, that people are bragging about what they've done, and, it's not that, right? So I always want to show people that everybody can do real estate. And, you and I know for a long time, right? 2015 or 14, I don't remember, right?
Probably back in 14.
Yeah. So I don't know if another people knows, but back then I was checking Craigslist. It was working. It was a website that you can find really properties. And I met you there, right? I called you and we talked. And I won't tell the whole story now, but after that, we liked each other and we started a partnership. We did a lot of deals together. And then I moved forward to, multifamily, and you kept doing things your own way. And, can you tell a little bit about the strategies that you have the experience with?
Yeah, sure. From the day we met, the first property that I ever invested in was a rental property that I got way in over my head with. I learned every single thing there was to learn about what not to do on that first house. And I was actually very motivated to sell it because I was right at the point of just giving up. And that's when I met Rafi, because I posted the house. I was like, I'm done. I can't be bothered with this. And you contacted me and you said, don't sell the house. I don't think you should sell the house. And that's sometimes all you need is just one person that believes in you and says, I think you should try something else. So from that point on, I've never looked back. I've got experience now in retail flips, what we call fix and flip. I have a portfolio of rentals, both long-term and short-term. Rafi and I have wholesaled a lot of properties. I've wholesaled a lot of properties on my own. I'm also a real estate agent, so I help people buy and sell properties. So every facet of the process of investing in real estate, I've dabbled in one form or another at this point.
Yeah, I gotta say something that you and I talked, and we back then started to look at real estate a little bit different. We always said that, wholesalers, when they used to wholesale, they were just wholesaling houses. And you and I always said that we gotta have a few tools in our toolbox. We don't want to do just wholesaling. We want to do rental. We're going to do every deal can fit to something, a different niche. And we wanted to have a few niches that we can make money from and not look on just one strategy, because some deals can work in different niches and make different profits, right? And that's how we actually when we approach the wholesaling. Everybody was saying, we give you, we can give you a cash offer, but they didn't really mean it. We actually meant it. We even closed deals in 3 days or 7 days, with our own money, and then put it on the market or sold it to another investors or got an investor with that. We did a lot of, things that were not common at that time. right?
We were
And,
way ahead of our time, and but even with wholesaling, we were
yeah.
way ahead of our time with that.
And and once I heard about you doing an Airbnb, I said, okay, I gotta understand more about it, right? Or not the Airbnb, the short term. It's actually not just Airbnb. You corrected me that, and then I decided, I told you I got an interview about that because I haven't done it. I haven't done it, right? And there are so many niches I haven't done, but and every niche has its strengths. And every niche has its disadvantages, right?
Yep.
So my goal here is to talk about the advantages, how to do it, and help people get into this space as well to have them another tool in their toolbox, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about short-term. What is a short-term rental? What does it mean? Why it's not Airbnb? Because a lot of people say Airbnb. What is the difference?
Yeah, it's kind of like Airbnb is just the most popular platform for short-term rentals. People call diapers Pampers, right? But Pampers is just a particular brand. You've got many different brands. So Airbnb is just the most popular short-term rental host site that there is. But you have HomeAway, you have VRBO, you have Airbnb, you have Booking.com, even Expedia. You can host your properties on those sites and charge nightly rates. You can also have your own host website for your properties that people can book you through, if you're running ads for it and stuff like that. So that's an advanced level. But for me, short-term rental is mainly people staying on a more short-term basis, like 30 days or less. It could be nightly, it could be weekly, but I haven't had anybody stay. Short-term is really 30 days or less. Mid-term is 30 days or more. And then long-term is 6 months out.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is.
Okay. And how did you come up with the short-term rental? Where did you hear about it? And how did you decide? Oh, now I need to do a short-term. How do you decide that?
Yeah. Looking into one, I've stayed in many Airbnbs while traveling, so that gets you thinking about what are based on what I'm paying them and the time that I'm staying, this must be pretty profitable, because if I'm paying somebody else, $200-300 per night to stay in their home, I flip the thinking and say, what is it like to be the actual owner, right? So that's what got me thinking about it in the first place, just by traveling and staying in other people's short-term rentals. And then I was of the impression that a lot of people are, that you have to be in like a vacation type of area for you to own one of those. So it kind of held me back for a while, because I was thinking, it's got to be downtown or by the water or something like that.
Where tourists goes, right?
Right. But until I started traveling for business or medical reasons or visiting family, when it wasn't just vacation, and I realized that, oh man, I'm staying in a random neighborhood and I need an Airbnb because there's no hotels nearby. And people always ask, like, is that a good location for an Airbnb? And I said two things. Is there a hotel there? So if there is a hotel there, that means there's demand, right?
Yeah.
Is there no hotels? If there's not a hotel, that means they probably need one, which means there's demand.
Yes.
So you really can put an Airbnb anywhere. It's just your occupancy will vary based on your rate, and that's a whole other conversation. But just in a nutshell, I got into it by being a guest first, and then I realized that I wanted to be a host.
Yeah, but now, okay, but most of the time, we as people, when we want to do something, we are looking for somebody who have done it. Have you talked with somebody who have done it before, or you said, okay, I'm pioneer, I'm going to do it?
No, yeah, I've talked to a few people who have done it in different markets. Where my properties are right now, I actually feel I didn't talk to anybody. I kind of did market research on my own. I went on to these sites and looked in my area to see what was there. And I said, hey, these properties are similar to properties that I've either purchased in the past or can purchase. And if they're working and they're running, looking at their calendar, looking at their prices, then I should be able to do the same thing.
Okay.
So in the areas that mine are at, I've never really spoken to anybody who's gotten them in those areas, but definitely spoken to people who have Airbnbs in general, just for their tips and their advice.
Okay. And so if I want to start an Airbnb, short-term Airbnb rentals, not just for tourists, right? How do I, and I'm working in a market, let's say in Indianapolis or any other place. How do I decide, where in that market should I buy? For example, would I do it in Cleveland, in East Cleveland? Would I do it there?
So it's hard to say if I would do it there, because the other thing is you have to, there's a few things that are important for me, right? I like when the properties are walkable. So within, close to public transportation, in a relatively safe neighborhood, right? So if there's high crime, high, violence, we're going to stay away from those, just naturally speaking. And the other thing is, as an investor, I typically like to hold properties in nicer neighborhoods for property values to stay high, appreciation, all that. So you're evaluating it almost like the same way you'd buy a regular rental, but you're just monetizing it in a different way for a higher return and preservation of the property. So walkable, for me, it's typically a B to A neighborhood.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be tourist areas.
Okay, it shouldn't be on the downtown. It can be an area. And when you start, okay, I want to buy in that neighborhood, do you do what kind of research do you do?
So there is a website called AirDNA that
again AirDNA.
AirDNA, AIRDNA.com.
Okay, AirDNA. Okay.
Yeah, AirDNA. And AirDNA, basically, their analytics is built to kind of project revenue for what your short-term rental will do by comparing it to what others are doing in the area. So they're scouring all those websites I talked about earlier: Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, all those websites. They're taking analytics from those websites and basically giving you a estimated projection of what your property will generate in revenue, accounting for vacancy and market conditions, and it'll spit out a number. Okay, and from that number, you
just a minute. Wait, what is that number? Is it it's
annual? It's an annual revenue.
It's an annual. What will be your annual revenue? Okay, yes. All right, yes. But in hospitality business plan, you have how many days, how many nights will be occupied, right?
Yep.
I did some research. In 2020, I thought the hotels environment will go down, so I started to learn how to underwrite hotels, which is crazy complicated, right? Okay. And that's one of the things I've learned. So it will show you how many nights also will be occupied, or
AirDNA will give you an average of what your occupancy will be. Yes. And then we're gonna aggregate that for an annualized figure. So they're gonna account for high season and low season. Okay. Because you're gonna have some properties that are gonna do really well in the summertime and get really slow in the wintertime.
And it detailed that it's just a number, or it shows all the statistics.
You've got free versions and you have got paid versions.
Okay.
So that just to answer your questions. You can get very, 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 very detailed if you pay for an upgraded version of their software. But I typically make it very simple, and I just look at what it's going to do if I rent it traditionally annually. So let's say a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a suburban neighborhood of Cleveland that I rent for $1,500 a month, right? That's going to be $18,000 a year, right? If my math is correct, I think, right? So if it's going to do $18,000 a year traditionally versus $35,000 a year on Airbnb, then I look at what's my expenses going to be, all those things. But there's benefits, there's pros and cons to both, obviously. But for me, it's really better for the property long term to be constantly clean, constantly checked, all those things. So that's the reason I do it that way.
We will go in a minute for the expenses. Right now, anyway, revenue. I got to ask a question about what if a neighborhood doesn't have Airbnb there? Nobody has an Airbnb there. How do you know what if it will work or not?
If nobody has an Airbnb, well, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, right? And it's kind of like people asking us, what's the market going to be like? Yeah. Some first things first, if nobody has an Airbnb, somebody has to be first, right?
Yeah. What will you do?
What would I do?
Yeah. It's a conversation about you. And of course, some people will have a different angle to Airbnb investing. So
I'm going to try to understand why. I'm going to try to understand the neighborhood. Okay. Why are there no Airbnbs here? There's got to be a reason. And if there are none in this neighborhood, what radius are we talking about? It's a very broad question. Like, how far out do I have to go before I find the first Airbnb or hotel? Because you're competing also with regular hotels and motels. So you have to ask yourself, how far out do I have to go before somebody can find a place to stay for a night? And then if there's none in that neighborhood, there's going to be a reason why. And until I find out what that reason is, that's the only way I'll be able to determine if I want to open one or not. So it kind of goes into market research, sort of.
What would you do in 1 month to try do an Airbnb, and if it works, and it's not. Would you try that?
It's kind of there's a financial commitment to setting it up. So I wouldn't try it just for a month. I would give it some time. I would give it, maybe 6 to 12 months to really determine if it's going to work, because Airbnbs are compounding investments. They get better over time as you have reviews, so does your occupancy grow and you can charge more, and you improve the property with amenities and so on and so forth. So 1 month is not enough time to really get a good idea of how it will perform.
Yeah. Well, how do we know, and it's a question being asked, how do we know if in the city there is a limitation to do short-term rentals or not? How do you know that?
It's easy. Call the city. You can call the building department. There are cities in Cleveland that do not allow it. There's Atlanta. There's Atlanta. It came out big that they're only allowing 1 or 2 per person. So that's just like anything else. It's like, how do you find out about building codes and violations or anything like that? Rental registrations, all that type of stuff. It's all in your local municipality website, or you can call down there and find out.
Got it. What about, let's talk about the expenses. Why do I need to look, on the expenses side?
Well, all the expenses are going to be on you, right? So a traditional tenant is going to pay, most of the time, pay their utilities, like their electricity, internet, gas, most times, right? But all those are going to fall on us now, because it's just like when you go to a hotel, you don't pay any, you pay your nightly rate and that's it. Yeah. So expenses are typically running us now around, it's running between 30 and 40%, depending on how efficient your property is. Then, depending on how you're managing and cleaning fees and all that type of stuff. But, and if you have debt or no debt, that's a big,
but that it below the, it's not below the number, but it's below the NOI. Yeah. So, and does the 30 or 40% includes the management fee, which we need to talk also, or not?
Yeah. So it does include the management fee, depending on, that's why there's that range.
Okay. So can you break down what will be what expenses should I look at?
Management fee, obviously it's roughly somewhere between, on the low end, 15%. And I've seen it as high as 33%.
Wow.
Yeah. It depends on what is included. Right. So, and then obviously you're going to have whatever your electricity bill is going to be, depending on how big of the house and what you have in the home. Then you're going to have your internet, your water, your gas, and if your cleaning fee is included in your management or not.
Okay. All right. And can we manage by ourselves?
It's possible.
Can somebody manage by himself?
It's possible, yeah.
So I need to have like a cleaning company that will be able to clean every time.
Yeah.
And probably a handyman who can fix things while. Yes. All right. So there are a lot of questions being thrown in the chat, which I will take a look in a second, right? I don't want to confuse myself being curious to understand. So we talked about the revenue, we talked about the expenses. What kind of tenants are we? Who are going to be the tenants?
Well, it all depends on, you got to remember, it all depends on where you're at, and it can be a wide range of people. So and I can only speak about my experience. So in Cleveland, where I have my properties, I get a lot of medical travelers. I get a lot of families who are visiting their kids who are going to college there. Mm-hmm. I get people who are working, like I just had a couple of guys that were working in the area. Their job sent them to the area to work, and they stayed with us for 62 nights.
62?
62 nights. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. At $180 a night. So you get, and you have to, so people are looking for, some people people travel for, it's like asking who the tenants are is asking why people are traveling. Like we had people there for Thanksgiving. They're visiting family who live very close by, and they needed a place for them to stay right down the street. We had people who were there for a wedding. We had people who were there for a bar mitzvah. We had people that, it goes on and on and on and on. And any reason why people travel are your guests.
And how do you know how much to advertise it for?
Oh, there's softwares for that. There's softwares within Airbnb. There's softwares that are add-ons to your account with Airbnb. One's called Price Labs, and Airbnb has what's called dynamic pricing. It kind of it fluctuates based on demand and based on what other people are charging. And it also depends on if you're managing it yourself or you have a property manager. And the goal with dynamic pricing is to keep your occupancy as high as possible. So if you're priced too high in comparison to another unit close by, it'll drop the price to kind of be in line, and so on and so forth. And if somebody tries to reserve you for, a short period of time versus a long period of time, the price moves. So that's all software. That's not something that you're going to do manually.
Yeah. In the hospitality, occupancy has a lot of weight on your revenue. That's for sure, right? So it's better to lower your rent to get more occupancy, to find the balance. So you're saying it's that those websites or those apps help you to determine the price. Is it manually or is it automatically?
That's automated.
Automated. Okay.
You can override it if needs be, but it's automated.
Okay. What about tenants ruining the place? Trash.
Like the guests trashing your house. Well, just like there. So I don't know if anybody here has stayed at Airbnbs or hotels, but when you check into a hotel, you have to check in with your ID and you have to give them an incidental deposit. Sometimes it's $250 or $50. It depends, right? So with Airbnb and a lot of these other websites, they have insurance for hosts. So that's a part of what they're paying for. We have what's called air cover, and VRBO has their own version of it, all of them. And if something happens within the house, as long as you file a claim, it's covered, and they're paying you for that. And they have the guest's information, so they can there's always a way to go after the person if something happens. And they're very good about, somebody damaged my refrigerator and we filed a claim, they fixed it right away. So
it happened to you that somebody, there was a damage?
Oh yeah. Damage a chair, damage a refrigerator. Sometimes it's not even intentional, but stuff happens, right? So they either pull from their deposit, or Airbnb has, I think, up to $1 million in coverage for fixing things within your home. So that's good. But you need to have another insurance, like a regular, like in any other house, right? You need to have a dwelling. Yeah,
coverage.
that's always there. But okay. that doesn't cover damage from the guest. That's only if the house burns to the ground or something more major happens, but it's no different from if a tenant, it's funny is if a tenant trashes your house, you don't have much recourse except taking them to court. If these guests trash your house, you file a claim and you get a check.
That's one of the things when you told me about it, I said, that's nuts. Yeah. That's crazy, right? You're getting higher rent, right? Yep. And you're getting tenants damage, which is great. And the only thing is the occupancy. If your occupancy is not good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Then that's the disadvantage, knowing that being able to forecast the occupancy. Yeah. Okay. And let's talk about marketing. So all your marketing is in one side. Do you put it only in Airbnb, or do you do multiple? How do you do that?
They're marketed. Most of the properties are marketed across multiple platforms. But for my properties, I don't manage them myself. So I have a property manager, and obviously they're on percentage, so they're incentivized to keep it occupied, because the more I make is the more they make. So, and they're marketing across multiple platforms, and also on their own private site to get private bookings in as well.
Okay. Is there any, when I look at a house, how do I know if it's a fit for Airbnb? Do I need for example, do I need a two bedrooms house? Do I need a 3 bedrooms house, 4 bedrooms? What do I need to look at? What is the avatar? What is the, I don't know.
It's like asking a real estate investor what's the best rental property to buy. It's determining what you want your portfolio to look like. They all rent, but they rent for different rates, and they will probably have different occupancy rates, but they all rent, they all work. I've got a friend who she's got 16 one-bedroom apartments, and she's always booked. But I have other friends who have all large 5-6 bedroom houses because they want to cater to groups. It's not a tailored direct answer. It's more something that you have to determine what strategy works best for you. And I think it's good to have, if you want to have multiple, it's good to diversify. Having maybe a couple of 2 bedrooms, a couple of 3s, see which ones work well before you expand, especially if you plan to expand, and then you'll determine, okay, I like this part, because like the girl who has 16 one bedrooms, she didn't start with 16, but she realized that it's probably easier to clean the occupancies where she needs it to be, so on and so forth. So they all work.
Okay. How do you renovate those units? It's not it's not a fix and flip, right? It's not for a homeowner, right? And it's not for regular tenants, right? So, or maybe yes, I don't know. You tell me.
So what I want you to do, and I want everybody to do, is just put themselves in the mindset of a guest. It helps you to be in the mindset of a guest. We all, Rafi, when you and I went to Jamaica, you wanted a really nice room.
Yeah.
You even upgraded your room because you wanted a really nice room. Yeah. Same thing. You want to make sure the house is, so I wouldn't say you're going to renovate it for a regular tenant or whatever. And by the way, my rentals, I'm renovating them all the same now. So because I want a higher quality tenant and I want higher rents. So just like improving apartments, if you make it nice, you increase the rents, you increase the occupancy, so on and so forth. So I would say as nice as you can make them for as affordable as you can do it is what you should do. Not saying break the bank and put marble floors and marble tiles, but if you can put in nicer touches, nicer finishes, and amenities that will help any type of outdoor spaces for people to, relax or smoke or have coffee or whatever, anything that can make the property more convenient for a person to want to stay there is what you want. You want people to look at your listing and your house and want to stay there over another place.
What do you think things that people need to take into consideration when they do that? For example,
having laundry available is very good, in a very convenient location. That's very good. Having an outdoor space is very good. Any type of activities that are on property that you can provide is good. If you're in a market where you can have a swimming pool, that's a great amenity. Having TVs in every bedroom. I've gone and stayed in places and there were no TVs in the bedroom, but TV in the living room. And when I'm laying in bed, I like to watch TV. It's a convenience. So I make sure there's TVs in all my bedrooms of my Airbnbs. Other people might see it differently, but I just think convenience is a good thing. So whatever you can do to make the property more convenient and appealing, you should. And I think outdoor spaces is a big thing. Patio sets or deck or gazebo or something like that. In Cleveland, because of the wintertime, we try to put fire pits in so people can, even when it's cold, you can still sit outside. A lot of people, you have to appeal to everybody. So even if you have somebody who has pets, you have a pet relief area or somewhere, or if you want to allow pets or not, people who are smokers, you give them a place where they can actually feel comfortable smoking, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So, but in that space, from what I understand, it's more about also reviews. What do you do, right? The more reviews, there is more demand because, in Airbnb, I've used Turo. Last time I was in Atlanta, I rented a car through Turo, which is the car Airbnb, right? So the first thing I started to look is how the car looks and the reviews, right? I didn't want to use somebody who's just new, and I wanted somebody who care about, trying to see that he cares about the reviews. So how do you push the reviews? How do you make sure you have a lot of good reviews?
Well, to make sure you have good reviews, it goes back to making sure the property is desirable, right? And that goes along with your communication with your guests. So it's kind of like the same way you'd have a good review as a landlord, where if your tenant calls you, you pick up, you respond quickly, you don't let things fall by the wayside. So as a host, it's kind of the same. If they have an issue, try to respond quickly. Try to make sure that there are things there that, once again, convenient and thoughtful. Like if your guests check in, you can buy a $3 bottle of wine and leave it there for them. It's $3, but it almost guarantees that they're going to have a really good experience on check-in. You make sure that you have really good Wi-Fi. Don't go for the cheap stuff. Make sure it's the good stuff, right? Make sure that you have a well-stocked kitchen. And then Airbnb forces you to write a review for your guests and forces the guests to write a review for the host. So there's no way to not get a review. It's just working on getting the best one. And the more reviews you have is definitely the more demand you're going to have for people to book your place.
And every time a tenant leaves, who check the house that everything is in a good condition? Is somebody's going to check the house? Is the management company do that? How do you do that?
That's a part of your cleaning checklist. So your cleaner is supposed to go there right after the person checks out and gets it ready for the other person to check in. And they're supposed to, and a part of their cleaning checklist is to check the rooms, check for damage, check for this, check for that, as they go through and clean the whole place. If they come up on something, they're supposed to send you photos and a report on what they found, so you can file your claim right away. And if nothing was found, then they go ahead and clean and make the place ready for the next guest.
Okay, so it's more automatic process on the Airbnb, the reviews, going back to that. So it's more automatically reviews where Airbnb, I've stayed in Airbnb when I was in Orlando. It asks you to put a review, and the owner puts a review, but you don't see each other review until both sides put a review, right? So that's, okay, all right. Do you have a way to get the tenants' opinion on things they would like to have on the house for the next one, for a better experience? Do you have a way to do that?
No, outside of just asking, because you're able to message each guest if you're managing it yourself, or you can ask your management company to do it. But outside of just asking them, hey, how was your stay? Is there anything we can do better? And that's the easiest way to go about, talking with your guests and getting feedback. And they like to feel involved. And they like to see when you're thinking about their experience. That's a way for you to definitely get a better reaction out of them, and for them to leave you a better review as well. So on that checkout message, say, hey, I know you're checking out today. I hope you enjoyed your stay with us. Is there anything that you think we can do better, or anything you need for us to do for you at the last minute before you go? That's a big, powerful way of getting a good review, getting feedback, all in one message.
Okay. All right. If I want to find a management company, how do I find a good management company? We all know that management companies in America, it's hard. It's hard. So it's a hard subject. So how do we do that? What do you think?
Well, it's just like finding a management company for long-term rentals. It's going to be a trial and error type of thing. It's either you're either going to do it yourself, or you're going to get referrals and try someone. And if you like them, you stay with them. If you don't, you got to try someone else. It's no different. It's just the only thing different about this is just, it's a different way to monetize the property, but you'll still have some headaches with property management here and there. But the reward outweighs those headaches. So I've gone as far as just Googling short-term rental managers in whatever city I'm thinking about doing one. And people do pop up, and you interview them and you see how you feel, you understand their process, and you give them a try.
Okay. Let's talk about selling those properties or getting financing for those. Let's talk about financing those properties too. Do I have, like, after it's stabilized, can I get a loan for those, like refinance or get a loan for those houses?
Absolutely. More and more lenders have come out with Airbnb. They actually call it Airbnb financing. And, Airbnb is, like I said, it's just kind of like the household name for short-term rental. But long story short, more and more lenders have come out recently with a product that they take they're also running AirDNA, and they're using your AirDNA revenue, and they're breaking it down, and they're using that as the justifying factor for the loan that they're going to grant you. On a refinance, I believe they want to see that the property has been running for, I think, 6 months. Some of them might be 12 months. And when you're able to print out reports from what your property has done, whether it be through bank statements or through Airbnb itself. And when they compare those two and they're close enough, or maybe 10% or whatever, each lender is different, you are actually now able to get funding on those properties. And a lot of investors are able to get funding even as foreign nationals as well. So there are lenders who are doing it.
And is it a better LTV or not LTV? I don't know. It's not LTV. It's more, how do they determine what the value they're going to give you? How do they determine?
They're going to do this. They're going to do appraisal just the same. It's more, you're more worried about the DSCR, the ratio, right? The debt service coverage ratio. And there are people who are going down there are lenders that are going down to 1-to-1. So that part is not that big a deal. I think they're lower on their loan to values though, because of the type of investment it is. So the last one I checked out was somewhere around 65%. But that whole thing fluctuates as the US federal rates move up and down. But
and the rate is higher than in long-term rentals, or the same?
slightly higher. I think half a point higher. Nothing that's going to make it break, because the thing about it is your cash flow is much higher. So, and their risk is much higher because of the risk of the vacancy.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. What about selling that to investors? Have you heard that anybody who sold it to investor as it's a different animal, right? It's not the same as, when investor look at a deal, he looks on the return he's going to make, right?
Yeah.
But short-term rental generate better returns. So how they look at that? How do they estimate how much to pay for that? Evaluate that.
Yeah, there's a whole community that are advertising and selling short-term rentals.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It's definitely a thing. People.
Where do we find it, or it's a secret space?
It's a secret underground place that we have to go to another webinar to talk about. But it does exist. Okay, it does exist. And there's a lot of people who want everything done for them, set up 100%. They don't want to have to buy it, furnish it, start from scratch, get the reviews. So there is value in buying an already running. It's almost like buying an already running business. There's value in buying a property that's already furnished, already has great reviews, already has bookings in the pipeline, right? And you're buying it today for X amount of dollars. And when you look at what your return is going to look like, then
where do we find this community really? How do I know what?
There are communities like that even on Facebook. There's communities like that even on Facebook.
Just look on Facebook for those. It's not like in Zillow. It's not. You're not going to find it.
There's one called Airbnbs. I have to look. But there are groups like that on Facebook.
Crazy.
Airbnb homes for sale. There's a group on Facebook called Airbnb Homes for Sale.
That's good. That's great.
Nationwide, almost.
It's actually people. And do you see any? I don't know if you know the answer, but do you see any? The market is shifting. Do you see any shift in that niche as well?
Yeah, it's over the last. So what's funny is over the last 2 to 3 months, it has definitely slowed down on in the general space of Airbnb. But the part that people talk about is the vacation rental side, right? Business travel has not slowed down. Medical travel has not slowed down. Family travel has not slowed down. So my units have not seen a drop at all because I don't cater to vacation. It's not a vacation rental. I only have one property that I'm doing as like a vacation resort, recreational type thing. Everything else is more tailored to people who just want a comfortable place to sleep for a couple of nights. And that's it. So there has been people who have seen slowdowns, but it's mainly the people who are getting most hurt are the people who went for the beachfront, water, mountain cabin type stuff, because that, if you think about it, that's leisure, and people have to have disposable income to use that place. It's more of it's not a necessity.
And it's a seasonal thing. It's not like you
exactly. Our units are more of a necessity. They're more, you need a place to stay. It's like an airport hotel. It's more of a necessity than a desire.
Man, wow, you throw a lot of bombs here. Let me go over some questions we have. How is the lease? Is there any? So the lease terms, it's about the lease terms that tenants, sign. It's an Airbnb lease terms, right? It's not something complicated right? It's the same.
Lease terms?
Yeah, well, tenants usually sign a lease, right? But here
they're not tenants. They are, but they're not. They're called guests. So everything is an electronic agreement on the platform. The platform stands as a mediator and a mitigator in between you and the guests. So, there's no lease. That also protects you. So if you even go and somebody's stay is up, they're technically trespassing on your property because there is no lease, and you don't want one either. This is not legal or financial advice, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see other question we have, because we answered everything, I think. Any return of expenses, we talked about it. We should get, okay. Is nurses are better than Airbnb? Ronan asked, but Ronan, for your question, I will answer. You don't determine who is your guest. It's guests, not tenants, right? So you don't determine. Can you determine, by the way, if a guest, you can improve it or not? You say, okay, no,
I think he's asking, I think the question he's asking, he might be talking about the traveling nurses arena, which there's a website called Furnished Finder that caters directly to traveling nurses. And they're typically midterm tenants because their stays are typically month by month, and you charge them, or you can charge them week by week. But they typically need a place that's fully furnished, that they're not responsible for utilities, and they just get to stay while they're working in the area until they leave.
So it's a short-term rental. Fits.
It is a short-term rental, but it's most times not nightly. It's most times, minimum of probably 2 to 3 weeks, because they're on contract working in an area. And most of the times they're there 2 months, 3 months, up to 6 months out until their contract ends. So, and you can cater to those people. There's people who only cater to traveling nurses because they like that model. They don't have to worry so much about the vacancy. They don't have to worry so much about the cleaning. But
then the rate is lower. So
it's lower, slightly lower, but more consistent. So it's to each his own, But you don't have as many. But you're not dealing with turnover. So you're not scheduling cleaners as often. You're not dealing with, wondering if you're going to get a booking. It's nothing like that. So
what happens if there is a problem at the home while there is a tenant's invitation to the conference? Does the property owner pay the tenant consignation fee?
I didn't understand the question. So what happens if there is?
Let's say there is a problem in the house and you need to cancel the night. You cancel the reservation. And they had a reservation, you cancel it. Do they get any cancellation fee on their side?
Oh, so if I as the host cancel on them,
yeah.
I don't think they get any cancellation fee. But it definitely affects your algorithm to get further bookings. If you don't have, you're only allowed to do it so many times, I believe, before it starts to affect your host profile or your ability to host further, future guests. So it's something that you don't want to, what would be, you have to have a really good reason. What would be the reason you need to cancel on a guest that's already have their trip planned,
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Did you ever do creative financing with Airbnb?
Creative financing, yes, on one.
With Airbnb.
Well, on one.
Yeah. What was the structure there?
It was a subject to property that we took over the mortgage from a seller who wanted out, and then we put it on Airbnb. And so I actually never owned that house directly, but I had it running as an Airbnb, and it was a duplex in Cleveland Heights. One side was Airbnb, and on the other side, this is another thing I never talked about. The other side was rented to short-term to a family who was displaced from their insurance company. So insurance companies look for places to put families who are displaced.
And it's always better than a regular tenants.
Yeah. So one side we had running an Airbnb, the other side we had an insurance family, and the cash flow was just crazy.
Amazing. All right, let's see what else. How do you start getting reviews? We answered that. For managing a short-term. No, we answered. Okay. Just a minute. We not ask a very good question. Do you need to pay more taxes, and do you need to get permission from neighbors?
More taxes meaning
like property tax or anything?
No. There's no additional property tax, and no, you don't need permission from neighbors.
No need for that question about the property tax or any taxes. I think it's related to that jurisdiction. So you should check. In Cleveland, not, but in other states, who knows, right? Yeah. Some cities can ask, okay, if it's an Airbnb, let's tax it more.
So there are some cities, actually, I don't mean to cut you off, Rafi. There are cities who they sell short-term rental licenses. And you have to pay. Some of them is an annual fee, some of them is a monthly fee. So it all depends on where you're planning to do this.
Yeah. Noah asked how much a management company charge for managing a short-term rental. We said it's between 15% to
15 to all the way up to 33.
But if I'm going to do it, right, especially at the beginning, I don't want to give them full control, because if they give them full control, I want to be in touch with the tenants. I don't want them to be in touch with the tenants. So, right.
You think you want to be in touch with the guests. You don't.
But depends. How do you know? But if you leave everything to them, I tell you what is there is a scenario I'm running in my head, right? Let's say I got good reviews on the management company, and I give them control. They do everything, right? Now they are bad management. They are doing bad service, not cleaning the house, nothing. And new tenants started to give me bad reviews. Now I have bad reviews in my track record.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's more along the lines of, what part of it would you want the management company to handle? The cleaning?
I don't know. You tell me. What should I do? Which part would you give? Which part do you give to the management company?
They handle everything. All of it.
So how do you know they're doing a good job? Reviews?
Well, I keep track of all the reviews, obviously. And how I know they're doing a good job is because my calendar is always full and I don't get phone calls.
Okay. Got it. It's a good answer. Okay. All right. Victor asked, and he asked in Hebrew, so I'll translate. Victor, next time, please, in English. So yeah, he asked if the nightly charge is higher than a monthly charge, and the answer is yes. Meaning, if you multiple by 30 days, it's yes.
There's typically a weekly and a monthly discount.
Drew asked, other short-term rentals you operate other than Airbnb? So Drew, I would answer that. Airbnb is just a word used for all the short-term rental. So it's not really, it's like, when we used to have a phone, we all call it telephone in Hebrew. We all call it telephone, but it was, it was just a carrier. So Ksania now wants to buy in Cleveland Heights. Is it possible to do STR in an AOA neighborhood? Okay, I didn't understand. What is an AOA? Do you know what is AOA? Wayne?
No, AOA?
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Not familiar with that.
So yeah, you need to ask the question again. Did he do Airbnb arbitrage? You did it on the subject too, so kind of.
It was basically the same thing.
Yeah.
The girl that does the 16 I was telling you about, that has the 16 one bedroom, they're all arbitrage.
Okay. Is a multi-parking is needed?
Yes, that's a big.
That's convenient. You want to have a car to be able to park one car, two cars. Usually.
So one of the difficulties we had with the duplex is that the duplex is that it was side by side, but we had one driveway. So a tenant would block the other one and it would be conflict. And so you want to think about how for it to be as frictionless and as convenient as possible for each guest.
Got it. What does walkable mean?
It means where you can get out and walk to the conveniences that you might need, like a pharmacy or food or supermarket or a public transportation within, I would say, 10 minutes walk.
Okay. Does the management company manage the listing on Airbnb or other sites? The question is yes.
Yes.
You said that. Where would you recommend to check short-term rentals in Cleveland suburbs? Airbnb, Booking?
Where would I recommend in Cleveland for short-term rental or to check?
Yeah, where would you recommend to check short-term rentals in Cleveland suburbs?
Well, so I think I'm every time I tell somebody where I have mine on the east side in South Euclid, as you know, Rafi. And most people, they're blown away because they didn't even know that was a thing, right? But for me, I think if you're within 15 minutes of the Cleveland Clinic in either direction.
Sorry, the question was, where would you recommend to check? So I will answer it in sites like Airbnb, Booking, all the sites that you can find short-term rentals. So, okay, Victor asked, what is the ratio price per night between long-term and Airbnb? So the answer to that is the website called AirDNA. You need to check AirDNA, what will be that in that neighborhood. It's a neighbor specific. Eyal, you still haven't said what is AOA. We don't understand what is AOA.
Let's see what is AOA.
Tanya said, I know you already answered, but still in Israel, I know that hardly 50% stays by or after expenses. So 50%, so Tanya says, in Israel, 50% goes to expenses. Is it the same?
On the
from operation,
it could go that high because you got to remember everybody's utilities fluctuates. So if it's a bigger house that is not as efficient, then it could go that high.
Yeah. So let's say it can be 50 to 55% or goes that way.
Sure.
Okay. Ronen has said HOA. What do you mean by HOA?
Homeowners Association. Yeah.
Maybe that's what Eyal was meaning.
I've found that most HOAs do not allow it. You have to read the bylaws. Some do, but most don't.
Yeah.
So you have to read the bylaws.
Okay. Guys, last question. I think we've done. If you're a first-time buyer, can you do Airbnb?
Absolutely. It's just a different way to monetize the asset.
Yeah. But I will answer to that. It depends. It depends how you're open to do that. It's always a mindset. It's not like a long-term rental. It's a little bit more difficult to do that. So you need to be more open to do it and believe in yourself that you can do it. You didn't talk about any other short-term rental.
Like what? What does you specifically want to know?
Meaning, how do you, so is it only Airbnb or can you work with other sites?
So corporate rentals, traveling nurse, corporate rentals. Yeah, we talked about traveling nurse. So George, so we talked about traveling nurses. Furnishfinder.com is the most popular one for travel nurses, and you can network with people directly who know that you have a property that can host travel nurses. There are corporate rentals, but corporate renters typically find you through these sites. Like I just talked about, I just had a set of guys who were corporate renters for 62 nights, but they found us through Airbnb. Who else? What else did he mention? The insurance company. Whenever somebody needs to be placed somewhere while their house is being repaired through insurance, the insurance company will either put them in a hotel or put them in a short-term rental. And you can create those relationships, and they find you through Airbnb, VRBO, booking.com, or there are some people who have direct relationships with those placement companies, and they'll rent your place. So I think once you get into it, you're going to start making connections, but there's a demand for properties that are fully furnished that people can stay for 2 nights onwards, 1 night onwards. For me, I have a 3-night minimum because it just doesn't make sense to have somebody for 1 night, then have to pay a cleaning fee. But you know, there's multiple ways to monetize it.
Okay.
Sure.
And question, would you try to do on one property to do it Airbnb and also for nurses same time, advertise it for both?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. You have to have, it's all set up the same. It's just a different type of clientele. And then you're going to have to determine when you get the nurse, if you get somebody who inquires to rent it as a nurse, you're looking at if the income is going to justify, it's going to be better than what you think you'll project to make on Airbnb. It depends on the season. It depends on the season.
Can you advertise if you are a guest for 3 nights, that's the rate. If you are a guest for 1 week, that's it. Is it advertised this way?
It's not the same platform. So the property will be listed on multiple platforms. So nurses are typically using platforms that they know it's tailored to them with a weekly rate. It's usually not a nightly rate because they're there for a longer time. So it's usually a weekly and a monthly rate.
Do you know the website's name?
It's called furnishedfinder.com.
Furnished Finder. Okay.
Furnishedfinder.com.
All right. Let's see. What ROI do you expect from a short-term rental?
For me, honestly, what I've been experiencing, it's so hard to say. I mean, it obviously depends. You know, your ROI will be higher when you have debt versus when you're doing cash. It's just, it's definitely higher than a long-term rental.
Yeah.
So I can't put a number on it, but definitely higher than a long-term rental. Sometimes almost double.
Okay. What is the cons of Airbnb? Good question, Ophek.
The disadvantages of Airbnb would, for me so far, it's the immediate, I would say it's more along the lines of the uncertainty of not knowing if there's going to be upcoming regulation or if something happens and you're going to have low occupancy, right? And you know, if you're a person that has a mortgage and you're waiting on, you know, that money to come in for you to pay your debt, then that might be an issue. But it's the same with if your regular tenants don't pay, right? So that's the reason I look at it from an annualized basis, because like I said, it's seasonal. So sometimes you're going to have low occupancy, but the high seasons will usually offset that. So far for me, I've been finding ways to convert more and more properties to short.
how many months or years have you have Airbnb properties or short-term?
I just started doing it about 18 months ago. So
18?
I'm approaching 2 years, but it's been really good.
Okay. Are you allowed to make from one house some units now? You can? Can you divide, split the house?
So can you do it? Yes, you can. It just depends on each city and what they allow and how you're going to advertise it. There are people.
I've seen Airbnb where you have like a room in a house.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You can absolutely, for Airbnb purposes, split it up. I like one of my properties, I just built an entire unit in the basement with a little mini kitchenette and a bathroom and a bedroom. And so the upstairs I'll rent to one person. It's got a separate entrance. You can go to the basement. So if somebody wants to stay somewhere for $75 a night, just because, and that's cheaper than most hotels, then there you go. So there are ways to monetize by adding more places for people to sleep. And if that's by creating an attic unit or a basement unit, go for it.
Do you have an exit strategy for those deals before you start, or you say I'm gonna hold it anyway?
Well, I mean, just like I said, it's just like a regular rental property. You're gonna buy it, try to buy it right. Make sure you have a little bit of equity in there. Make sure whatever improvements that you make are justified, and you're gonna get a good valuation on the back end. And I think it's even an easier property to sell. The duplex I was telling you about, we sold it at a premium mainly because the person saw just how much money it was making. So we were able to sell it at a premium. So I don't think there's any real disadvantage to going in this route.
Yeah. Tell us one horror story. People don't want to let you go. Tell us one horror story. Do you have any?
Honestly, so far I don't have any real horror stories.
Knocking on woods. Everybody, 60 people on the line right now, and 300 going to watch that later, probably even more. So
yeah,
knock on woods. Okay. Sorry about the Ofek. One last question of Ofek, and then we're done. What do you think to rent property to a sublease agreement and put on Airbnb, and it's good, bad?
However you acquire a property is up to you. If you want to be creative, you can. If you want to rent one and the owner tells you that, and you get an agreement with the owner that says it's okay for you to sublease it by putting it back on Airbnb, go for it. If you want to buy it in cash, go for it. But if you want to get a mortgage, go for it. For me, I bought my properties and I took debt on them because I found it as an easier way to even pay off the property with the high cash flow. I'll cut a 30-year mortgage in half with the amount of cash flow that's coming in on those properties. That's just my strategy. But however you acquire the property, as long as you have the right permissions and in place and the right systems in place, then absolutely you can do it. There's a lot of people who arbitrage. So,
Wayne.
Yeah,
great.
It was a lot all at once, right?
Yeah, it's good, man. It's good. Yeah. That's why I like talking with you. That's why I interview you, because it's a good conversation, right? It was a conversation, and you're good in explanation. You don't know it, maybe you don't know it yet, but you're a good mentor. So.
Oh, thank you. I've been told. Thanks, Gerard. Thanks everybody for tuning in. All
right. Wen, we keep in touch, of course. Thank you everybody for listening, and everybody listening on the recording. We're gonna put some links on the down in the description. By the way, Wen, if anybody wants to reach out to you, sell a house, you're a realtor, right? Sell a house in Cleveland, buy a house in Cleveland. We haven't talked about it. Get your advice maybe how can they reach you out?
Yeah, you can reach me. I can give, if you want me to give my cell, I can.
Whatever, but prepare, yeah. If you put a
yeah, no, it's fine.
That's yours, not me. I don't care.
It's fine. You can reach me on WhatsApp. It's the easiest way to reach me. My cell is 216-440-1926, or you can email me at Wayne Brooks, REI, that's real estate investor @gmail.com. And those two, I mean, I've always got my phone on me and I'm always checking my emails, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Right. Great interview. We will put those information in the description. Whoever in right now in the interview listening or viewing, go back to review on the replay and take those notes. All right, Wayne, always a
great
pleasure.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.